If you thought it was impossible to do quality networking at a virtual summit, because hey, it's online, right? But if you thought that, you are dead wrong. Yes, people attend online events network, and so do speakers. But you might be wondering, how do you exchange coffee, hour chat, and business cards when you have remote attendees? Few marketing hooks work better than the promise of quality networking with high-level industry rainmakers and decision makers and business peers. So today on Renegade News, let's dive into some reliable hacks to facilitate quality networking opportunities at your virtual summit. Welcome back to Renegade News. I'm your host, Glenn Kowalski. Every week on this channel, we discuss how entrepreneurs and other freedom lovers just like you can build cancel culture-proof businesses, regain their data sovereignty, and make a bigger impact so that they can break free from the system. First, let me make one thing really clear. Creating virtual networking opportunities as a bonus at an online summit is different from actually hosting a virtual networking event whose sole purpose is to provide a space for networking. Almost like facilitating online dating for business. Networking events are key to your total virtual summit program as they gather leads and they promote connections between the attendees. You want to align your virtual networking events with your total event program. You want to identify where it's all going to fit together, whether it's a piece of the virtual conference itself, or whether it's really more of a standalone one-night stand kind of deal. And with all of the pieces in the puzzle put into the right places, you're going to have a successful total events program, and it's going to drive forward your business objectives. So with that in mind, let's look at some virtual networking formats that you can include in your summit that'll make it more attractive to both your speakers and to your attendees. The physical proximity of in-person events allows attendees to create their own community for the duration of the event. But how can you deliver those same kind of connections when you're doing it virtually? Just because you're not sitting across the table from an attendee or speaking to them, so how can you deliver those connections virtually? Well, it's not that hard, because just because you're not sitting across the table from that attendee or you're not speaking to them in a physical location, that doesn't mean that you can't leverage your virtual event to make that same kind of connection. When you're planning the networking for your virtual conference, there are really three different types of connections that you have to think about when you're building that community experience. And that's what your online event should be. It should be an experience. First of all, you have sales networking, of course, with your attendees. You've been conducting virtual one-on-one meetings for years, and certainly you have been for the past few months because site visits aren't practical. We've all sort of had more and more of these Zoom style of meetings. Well, you can apply those same types of principles to your virtual event. With appointment scheduling tools, sales can be set up with meetings from attendees before the event even starts, and without taking a valuable time in their agenda. There's also attendees networking with other attendees, and you have to consider how they're going to actually network as well. Your mobile event app is going to be critical for these types of connections. Using messaging tools and the event feed, attendees can connect with the other attendees virtually through the app. And by scheduling things like happy hours, breakout rooms, virtual round tables, and one-on-ones, you can further encourage that networking. You also need to provide networking opportunities for sponsors and exhibitors who want to network with the attendees. The exhibitors, the other attendees, and even your sales teams can all review the registration list for the virtual event, and then they can make appointments the old-fashioned way, just by sending an email with a Zoom link like they've likely been using over the last few months, a couple of years anyway. You'll also likely get more and better engagement if you make it easy and seamless to schedule the appointment from right within the virtual experience itself. There are a few common guidelines that you have to use with your network if you want to use networking in your virtual events. First of all, you want to start with introductions, which is similar to what you would do in a live event as well. So depending on the size and structure of the event, you can actually appoint a moderator who has the ability to mute other speakers. So while you're doing it and while you're running these events, there's a few rules that you want to follow. You want to make sure that you're not letting one person monopolize the conversation. You want to set time limits for the discussions and the individuals. And you want to stay on mute probably yourself if you're not speaking. However, if you're a moderator and you have actually muted your feed so that others can talk, keep yourself on video just so people know that you're around, and make sure that your background isn't distracting and attracting too much attention to you. You want to be there to facilitate their networking, not to draw attention to the person moderating. It's also good if you can have contact information loaded in the event that's all ready to share and can be used to introduce the attendees even a few days before the event goes live and makes that information accessible on the virtual events site. Now, you have to be careful here because of privacy concerns. So it's going to depend on the type of event you're running, how far in advance you want to put that information out, how much information you want to display. A lot of times, if you can just register first names, that's better if people are privacy concerned. Like I said, you have to judge that based on your event. What would also be excellent, though, is if you can pose questions before the event that'll give the attendees some time to prepare their different answers. So if they know that there's going to be specific conversations going on, you can actually prep them for that. And that makes that networking time so much more powerful. It's also really good if you can have a code of conduct that highlights the type of language. For example, if you don't want any defamatory language, you don't want berating, those are pretty standard. Some summits will allow a certain amount of colorful language, if you like. That depends on your summit and on your audience. Generally speaking, it's better to try to block out that type of negative energy. You don't want people fighting. Even if you are in more of a freedom space like we are, you still want to keep things polite and professional in those. And it's good to just have that code of conduct there so everybody knows what they're getting into. There are a number of different formats that you can actually break your networking sections or the parts of your virtual event into. You can use breakout rooms. And if you aren't using breakout rooms for your networking events, you really should start considering it. Basically, the way the breakout room works is it's designed to take a group of individuals smaller from your main event, but preferably they're related in some way to the same types of interests, but it's more of a small group experience. It's more of an interactive type of experience where you break up that large group into this predetermined number of smaller groups. It could be 8 or 10 is a good size for a breakout room. Again, it's going to depend a lot on what your event is. Maybe it has to be 20 or 30 or 50 if it's a large event. It really depends, but the idea is to have a smaller group so that it can be just a little bit more of an interactive and a little bit more of a intimate experience. Breakout rooms allow attendees to meet new people in a random way. And if your network session is discussion driven, you can actually pose a few questions ahead of the event just to kind of get that ball rolling and to give the attendees time to prepare for those. So that when the event does break into those different groups, people have questions prepared, they have things that they want to talk about ready, and they're not sort of being thrust into this new environment without anything prepared. Now, on the other hand, there can be advantages to that as well. But these rooms give people the chance to share different insights, to have Q&A, and just sort of interact in a more intimate way. Another option for a breakout room that might not be quite as intimate or inclusive is a Q&A, and that can have like a panel of speakers. And with those, you keep a smaller number of attendees who are posing questions through your virtual tech tools, and then they're getting answers for those in real time. Even better, you can keep all the attendees on video and have them pose their questions according to a predetermined order, or maybe a different level of membership. You can also have a level of membership where the larger group is watching the questions, but maybe a tier where people can actually pose questions that get answered in those Q&As. You can get creative in how those actually work, but all of them are seen as networking opportunities because it's just more of a way to get the audience involved within the presentation. If you want, after the QA portion, attendees can often discuss what was learned, and that's a great way to get the attendees talking amongst themselves. Moderated discussions are one of the best virtual networking event types. So with those, you can take the small group, have a moderator lead a discussion. The moderator there is in charge of choosing individuals to speak to, deciding by hand raising or by chat or by Q&A feature, depending on the software you're working with. Then that moderator guides the conversations from start to finish. Another really cool thing that's popped into the virtual networking space is virtual speed networking. And that relies on the breakout room features of the virtual tech platform, and it has to be a feature of the platform that you're using. But with that, when attendees join the event, you're actually able to designate the size of the breakout rooms randomly and send people there for a specified amount of time. A lot of times you can do these one-on-one. You can do with the software that we're using in a lot of our events. We can actually say, an attendee can go and say, I want to do the speed networking. You set a set time, whether it's 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever that is, and the system will randomly match them up with one other person, or match them up based on a weighting of different features that maybe you did in a questionnaire before the event got started. Depending on how it works, after that speed networking, you can then join the groups back together and you can send them all out again to a new breakout. And this process can repeat as many times as you want. By integrating networking into your virtual summit plans, you are really adding an entire new dimension that many virtual summit hosts are missing out on, quite frankly, because it gives so much better experience for the event. And that's what it's all about, is the experience. Now, I know that allowing attendees network at our events has become one of the huge selling points for repeat attendees. So we started doing this with one of our clients who's done a number of different summits. And people are actually joining the upcoming summit specifically because they enjoyed those networking opportunities so much. And that opportunity to meet other people. Many of those relationships have continued down the road and become outside of the events. Those relationships have continued. Also, by allowing your sponsors and your speakers to interact, you're making your summit more attractive for them, because that person or that company gets more of an opportunity for sales, for lead generation, to build a connection with that audience. And making it more of an interactive experience then opens up opportunities for everyone. Whether you're adding networking to your virtual summits or not, virtual summits are one of the best ways out there to create more leads, generate more sales, launch new products, position yourself as an expert, and so much more. So to learn more about hosting your own virtual summit, click on the video that you see on your screen right now.